Welcome to another edition of TSA Safety Matters. I'm your host, Greg Kerr from Stakeholder Relations. And today we're with TSA's Mike Adams, who's the Director of Boilers and Pressure Vessels and Operating Engineers, for a few thoughts on what's happening in the industry and TSA's important role in providing safety. So thanks for being with us today, Mike.
Well, thanks, Greg. My pleasure to be here.
Now, Mike, you recently stepped into some fairly big shoes in operating engineers. John Coulter, who was our chief officer, recently retired. Now, that it was always under your bailiwick as director and chief officer, but you had a lot of work to do. What were the things that you first started looking at for operating engineers when this happened?
Well, Greg, first off, TSA always had two chief officers, myself under the Act and John Coulter under the regulation. So when John decided to retire, it was decided to consolidate both of those roles into one position. So I've been taking over both the background and the regulatory aspects of the chief officer for the last 3 months. And it's been a very busy 3 months. I started looking at all the processes and all the activities that the operating engineering program was undergoing, and we've identified a lot of ways of improving our processes and improving how we provide public safety services to Ontarians. Things like examinations. We've been looking at the refrigeration and the compression examinations. We noticed that there were 2 examinations for each certificate, and they were redundant. So we said, okay, let's streamline this process. So we've changed the process. We are in the process of changing the process to go down to 1 exam for each refrigeration A, refrigeration B, and compression. And that means people who apply to get their certificates will now only have to take 1 examination plus the practical time in order to get their certification.
What were the two exams? What did they consist of?
Well, one was multiple choice and one was an essay type question. So we decided to replace one with just multiple guess and replace the other with just essay type, just to make sure we cover all aspects of the refrigeration curriculum.
And reduce the burden on industry.
Exactly. Half the examinations, so half the cost.
Do you see this having other cross purposes or reaching out into other areas?
Not right now. The SOPEAC organization is changing the 3rd class examination so that all 4 are now multiple choice. But that's been communicated previously from the SOPEAC group, and that's coming into effect the 1st of January.
So you have been working on standardized orders in operating engineers as well as boilers and pressure vessels. But first off, what does it mean to have a standardized order?
Well, standardized order means we consistently identify what the deficiency is that we found, and then we have a standard time to comply to fix that deficiency. And that way we're consistent across across all plants have the same deficiency. We issue the same order with the same time to comply. So that's what we're trying to standardize and become more consistent on how we identify issues.
And do that on a very firm risk analysis.
Yes, our public safety risk management department had worked closely with us to identify the higher risk orders and the medium and lower risk orders and determine what the appropriate level of response was with the PSRM group. So that's been done for the operating engineering group, and now we're in the process of setting that up to do the same thing for the boilers and pressure vessel group.
What's the reception been like so far?
The reception has been very good. On the boilers and pressure vessel side, the insurance industry is very keen to align their what they call recommendations with our orders, so that when we see a leaky pressure relief valve, we'll assign it a certain order and with a certain time to comply. They would like to apply the same terminology and time to comply with their orders whenever they find a similar issue. So that would be aligned with the insurance industry, with TSSA, and it also will align with the national board, which has a standard set of orders that they use to report on their non-compliances across North America.
And you've also been applying a bit of that to how you rank plants, like specifically for operating engineers. What's the feedback been from those sessions?
Very, very positive. We just finished off a week meeting in Charlottetown with the what we call the SOPEAK group, who have been tasked with coming up with a standardized way of ranking all the power plants across Canada, so that they are assessed the same, so that a second-class plant in Ontario is the same as a second-class plant in the Maritimes or out west. Right now, that's not the case. So we've been working with a committee, and we had PSRM look at the proposal for how we're going to do the risk assessment of those plants.
PSRM is TSSA's Public Safety Risk Management Group.
Sorry,
yes.
That's right. And they looked at how we were planning on assessing the risk for those plants. They came back to us with a much better way of looking at it as a hazard ranking using a fault tree analysis. And I took that to the team last month, and it was wholeheartedly endorsed by the team, saying, yes, this is a much better way of assessing the hazards of the plants. And now the SOPEAK team is pulling that into their recommendation, which will be taken to the Association of Chief Inspectors this 2016, and eventually we'll be pushing to have all provinces adopt that hazard ranking system for all plants across Canada. So we made some very good progress in that field.
Excellent. Now that fits nicely with labor mobility too, in terms of the work that's been done in that regard. Yep. But you've gone even a step further.
Yes. One of the other outcomes of our meeting is all the 7 colleges in Ontario have now been recognized by the SOPEAK committee, so that all the other jurisdictions will recognize the 7 Ontario colleges are having equivalent accreditation for operating engineering qualifications, just as Ontario will now recognize the qualified colleges across Canada for our Ontario certification. So now it's truly coast-to-coast qualifications, credibility across Canada for the colleges. So that was another huge improvement that we've just made last month.
And made improvements for foreign applicants as well.
Yes, good point. Normally when we get applicants from outside of Canada, we have to do an individual assessment of their practical time to see what if it's equivalent to the practical time that they would receive in Canada. Now previously we used to put a 1-year time limit on the recognition of that practical time experience. And the main reason for that was to just give more motivation to get their exams written within a 1-year time period. It's only for a 4th class certification, so they only had to write 2 exams in a year. And for the vast majority, that was sufficient. Most of the foreign applicants had no problems doing that. However, when I took over, I was realizing that there's no real rational justification for that 1-year time limit. And what happens if there's somebody who's having trouble passing those exams? Since we don't do that for our internal applicants, I said, okay, let's even the playing field, be consistent. So we eliminated the 1-year time limit, and now we treat the foreign applicants the same as we do internal applicants for practical time. There's no time limit on recognition of practical time. So that's another improvement that we've made in our processes.
Excellent. You've been on the circuit, I guess, for quite some time,
Yes.
at a number of conferences and giving speeches in various parts of the province.
Yes.
You were recently at the International Power Engineers, the Chiefs Conference, and you were a speaker there.
Yes.
What did you speak about on that session?
Well, I was the keynote speaker at the Institute of Power Engineers Chiefs Conference. That's an annual conference that they have here in Toronto. And basically, it was an update of initiatives that we've been working on. Simple things like, well, actually, it's not so simple. We are the OE certifications. Right now we have two types. We have provincial and standard. That was necessary way back when SOPIC was first introduced to the provinces. But now with labor mobility and access to internal trade, there's no real distinction between provincial and standard tickets or certificates anymore. So we've decided to phase out the provincial OE certificates so that any of you out there who have a provincial OE certificate, when you renew this year, it'll be replaced with a standardized OE certificate. So that's one area of simplification that we're doing. We talked about simplifying the examinations. We talked about what we're doing with the colleges. We are. I've just finished our annual audit and meeting with all 7 colleges. Very rewarding experience. It's very, very worthwhile for TSA to get out to the colleges and particularly to meet the students. That was a very rewarding, very valuable component of meeting with the new folks joining the OE profession and sharing our concept of what the professionalism of OE is, and encourage them to stick to their progression to get to at least a second-class power engineering or operating engineering certification, because that's what we call the sweet spot. That's where you have most of the opportunities available to you. So that was very valuable at the colleges. Another thing that we've been doing is, because over a third of our plants in Ontario are ammonia refrigeration plants, we are working with the colleges. We want them to increase their focus on refrigeration and specifically ammonia refrigeration, so that
So making changes to the curriculum
itself, so that the graduates from the colleges are more familiar with ammonia systems. And because a lot of the fourth class and third class operating engineers will be going to refrigeration plants of one type or another.
You did have a strong message for industry as well, particularly with regard to qualifying time for those students.
Yes. Associated with that is we're going through a reviewing of the operating engineer regulation, and we're looking at several areas of improvement. One of those areas of improvement is to what type of practical time we recognize to get qualified as an operating engineer. Right now it's only boiler time or steam time. We want to increase that practical experience to include refrigeration, compression, and steam prime mover experience, so that we get a more well-rounded certification process. So that's something we are working with on the new OE regulation. The other thing is we want to change our title instead of operating engineer. We want to be relabeled as power engineer, just like the rest across Canada.
But there's also some of the students have difficulty getting that qualifying time, and you did have an effective way to make sure that industry sort of buys into this.
That's right. Well, last year, the biggest problem that was discussed between the colleges, TSSA, and the Institute of Power Engineering was what we call co-op placement time. That was getting college graduates some practical experience outside the college in order for them to get to graduate from the college. So there was a bottleneck last year, so we took that away and looked at what could TSSA do to ease that bottleneck. Well, what we've done is both IPE and TSA, we worked together to produce a letter to all the attended plants in Ontario, encouraging them to take on co-op placements for students so that they can get the a well-rounded practical experience to augment their college experience. The letter explains why we need to do it. It identifies the looming potential shortage of power engineers. It also identifies other benefits, like there's WSIB aspects, there's insurance aspects that the letter says these can be, you can use these to help fund and support the taking on a college student for all the various attended plants. Mm-hmm. We've also doubled the number of plants that are available and recognized for practical experience. So that will greatly assist the colleges in finding more plants that will take on college students for placement.
Is that a broader expanse across the province as well?
Well, it is across. It's about 500 plants now are recognized across all of Ontario, mm-hmm. And that list was given to each and every college. Complete with the points of contact with all the current chief engineers. So mm-hmm. we've doubled the number of plants available to the colleges. We've given them the contact points, and we've spread the word with all the attended plants and why they should take on students. So far, I'm getting very, very positive feedback from both the colleges and industry that this was a good move, and it looks like we may have fixed that particular problem. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at new problems to fix.
But they can even get tax credits too in terms of hiring these co-op placements.
That's right. So that letter gives that information. It also gives the links to where to get this information, and also the points of contact for all 7 colleges.
Mm-hmm. Now, you on the other side, you actually talk directly to students, and you were recently at a high school in Mississauga, Glen Forest, for something they called the STEM Speakers Bureau, which
Correct.
is science, tech, engineering, and mathematics.
That's right.
So what was that like for you?
That was a very rewarding experience. It was apparently it's the largest student-run conference in Canada, about 1,800 attendees, and it's a fantastic career fair that the school put on. They had demos outside the speakers halls. Plus, they had about 4 separate rounds of speakers. Must have been about 40 different speakers, all science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So I had my 12 minutes. I was able to show an abbreviated version of the operating engineer video that TSA created a few years ago. And if anybody's listening, if you want to be refreshed on that great video, it's on our website under OE at the bottom. It's
on our YouTube channel too.
And it's on our YouTube channel. So it's an excellent introduction to operating engineer and why you want to become one.
Do you see, like, I think this was a unique thing that did bring, like, I think it was over 800 schools together. This is an effective way to get that message across and again address the skills shortage issue.
Yes.
Do you see a way to further promote this? Because this is a great idea.
Yep.
And it should catch on in other areas.
Well, yes, I have shared all my experience with our HR department so that they're now aware of this. It looks like the school does this twice a year, mm-hmm. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye open for the next one, and we'll see if Fuels and ED or the other departments within TSSA would be interested in participating, because it's very, very worthwhile.
Excellent. See any sparks light up when you talked about OE and BPV? Did anybody ask intelligent questions? Or
well, there weren't opportunities for questions, but there was a very large round of applause after the OE video was played.
Yes.
So, yes, there was some good feedback on the OE program.
Excellent. So a lot on the go, Mike,
Very much.
and still going on towards a lot of these improvements, which I think it works for industry and works
Yes.
for TSSA. So thanks
Yeah.
for being with us today, Mike.
Well, my pleasure. And I only talked about half of what's been going on. I have to save the other half for the next time. Thank you.
Okay, stay tuned for more TSSA Safety Matters.